Hey everyone, this is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean, and my co-host here with me again is Ian Gibson. Ian, how are you?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
So this is Hater Radio. We're a college football media brand. We do live video, even though this is technically recorded. It'll be shown live on YouTube and on Facebook and Twitter live. So you'll see it there at 5 o'clock, which 5 o'clock Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern, which is every Sunday and Wednesday. That is our when we show it. So like it's on the banner there up above, it shows it there. So keep an eye out for that. We have other articles on haterradio.com and other stuff we do we're on TikTok, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, Threads. Most of those you can find us at hater_radio for most of those, except for YouTube and Facebook, which YouTube is at hater radio, and then for Facebook it is Hater Radio CFB. So that is ours. But then Ian, what are your socials real quick before we move on?
Yeah, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, they'll be at GGatorG.
Okay, cool. That's how you can reach us. Again, plenty of articles on haterradio.com. We'll have some more coming up. We didn't have one this weekend. I was going to do one, but my schedule was a little too tight, so I wasn't able to do it. But with that being said, let's jump into it. Week 5, a lot of really good games, some really close finishes. One of the games that wasn't a close finish was this Florida Kentucky game, which was, from like Jump Street, it was 16-0 within like the first 10 minutes of the game. And Florida didn't look prepared. I honestly, all I'm going to really say from this, because I know we're going to talk a lot about it, but I'm just going to say is really with this, as fans, as like the team, this game needs to be thrown out. Like, don't look at this as like anything more than just a terrible game. And there is really move forward from this point, especially the team. Like the team needs to be just like, you know what? It happened. The team is 3-2. They have Vanderbilt coming up and then South Carolina after that, and then the bye week. So they have a chance to, move on from it. And I think they can. It obviously was a terrible game. Ray Davis went all over him for over 280 yards and just was unstoppable. I mean, no one could tackle. I mean, that was out of the whole thing that I was pissed off about, which I was pissed off a lot about this game, was the missed tackles. I mean, the team had been doing so well on defense all year, was top 10 in total defense, was the number 1 defense in the SEC, and then just, couldn't stop Ray Davis. Anytime he ran through, it was like a 10-15 yard clip, sometimes even more. He had that 75 plus run right after that special teams penalty, which honestly, that was the complete difference in the game. It was 10-0 at that point. Florida finally makes a stop. They force a punt. Florida gets the ball, but then there's a penalty for leaping, which I didn't even know you could have leaping on punt coverage. I had no idea until that was called. And it really, the second that gets called, they get the ball back and Ray Davis runs down the field. And that was it. Like once they were up 16-0, Florida just stayed in the game a little bit. It was a 2-score game at one point, but that was just, they weren't coming back. I will say, as much as the offense struggled, and a lot of it, they had a lot of opportunities where if they just catch the damn ball, maybe they can convert first downs and do something with it. But it was just, no one was helping out Mertz. Penalties again. I think they had 10 penalties again. Just ugly game. Like I said, burn the tape. Just that's what you do and regroup. This ain't the end of the year. There's plenty of games to play. And I have full faith that they're not going to give up. They weren't going to win a championship this year. At most people thought the ceiling was like 8-4, and that's still within the realm of possibilities. So I don't like these other teams on the schedule. Like, they're not that like world beaters. Georgia didn't look that great. LSU didn't look that great. I still don't think FSU looks like that great. Arkansas obviously struggled. They're now at 3 losses. LSU is at 2 losses. I mean, Missouri is about the only one really that may scare you, but they haven't really played anybody. South Carolina's at 3 losses. Vanderbilt is terrible. So there's plenty of wins to be had in the rest of the schedule. It just obviously sucks to get your head beat in like they did here. But Ian, go ahead. I've been talking too much.
I was just frustrated because this is what it has been like, is that, and I've said this is the one problem I've seen with the Gators under Napier. I always feel like once there's a good win or they look good, something's right around the corner. And this was it. It was, you could have argued the Charlotte game might have been the canary in the cake. But I'm going to, just say that was a bad week. Honestly, I don't think it was. I just think there was a letdown game. This one, they said they had a great week, then and they just got flat out punched in the mouth. They did not look like they wanted to be there. And I don't get, that's what it was the thing that just boggles my mind with this is like, how does a team look so great against, have these really good games against Tennessee, then they, blew out a clearly inferior McNeese State. They showed their muscles there. And then you just have these games. And unfortunately, this has kind of been a growing trend. The other thing, too, is that Florida has only won one road game under Napier, and that was Texas A&M. And when they're on the road, they don't look good. They have not looked good. The only other time they've looked good on the road, I would argue, besides the A&M, would have been the Tennessee and Florida State game, but those are still losses. But this one, you can't pin this on anything else other than we got beat flat out, out-coached, outplayed, out everything. Kentucky is just straight up better than the Gators right now. There's no two ways of putting it. And I remember some people were trying to talk me down from it because I was clearly kind of in these moments, I vent.
Yeah.
But they go, well, if Kentucky's better, then it's fine that they lost. I was like, it really doesn't make it better. I wanted to see if they say if it was like a drag in the mud and Florida was fighting and they got, they lost by 3 points. I'm like, you know what? It sucks. I still would have been upset. But this makes me more upset. They didn't want to play. Once they, got beat, they gave up. And that's what it looked like. And that's the thing that makes me the most upset out of everything is that it was really over at the first quarter. I literally was watching the game, and after the first quarter, I was like, I don't see the way they're playing right now, them coming back from that. The other thing, too, was, as I've mentioned, Kentucky just flat out said, beat us through the air. And not taking anything away from Graham Mertz. Mertz did, besides the interception, as good as he could.
That wasn't his fault. That ball clearly should have been caught. Like, as much as it was in between 3 people, the guy Boardingham, I don't know why he jumped. For one thing, he shouldn't have jumped. He should have stayed on his feet, put up his hands, caught the ball, and tucked it in. That's all that had to be done, and it was a first down. And I know it's it's like, oh, it's just one play, but it was an interception that set up an easy touchdown right away. Literally, if he gets a first down there, maybe they continue the drive, maybe not. They punt it. At least it's a little bit more difficult for Kentucky to try to score again there. But I don't know. It's the details right now that they're not, correcting. It's with the tackling. God, on that touchdown, Davis's touchdown where Kimber has him, maybe it's not a touchdown. There was a play where Kimber has Davis at the line, and he turns in and doesn't even fully commit to the tackle, and he just completely outruns it. And it's just like, man, stuff like that needs to go away. You are the guy, you have to make the play there, and you can't just you can't turtle there. You have to step up. And God, I mean, there were just so many plays that they were just getting, worked. And it was, a lot of was Davis himself was making them look bad. And, I will say, I think now, because I think Davis had 8 touchdowns up until this game, and I think he had at least 3. So like
He
now
had
he had
4 total.
11. So he had 4 in that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now he has 12 touchdowns in 5 games. That is insane for a running back. You know, I know they like kind of said it that it's setting him up for the Heisman. I don't think so. It would take a real heavy lift by Kentucky to get him to that point, but still, like 12 touchdowns so far in the season is a ton for anybody, regardless of the competition. And he had 4 against up until this point a good Florida defense. I think going forward, what they need is maybe they needed this defensive wise because they were hearing their own press clippings. They're like, oh, you know, you're the top 10 defense in the country. You're getting all this, you're getting all these accolades. Maybe they needed a reality check because, you know, I don't know. It's a shame because I thought the defense was going to be able to carry them the rest of the way. Maybe they won't be able to. Maybe there's some stuff that they can correct. I don't know. I mean, I'd have to really like dive into the film. I'm not as much of an analysis guy as like the guys on like Gator Nation Football Podcast, which I'll definitely listen to on Monday because I'm curious to hear their thoughts about this because, you know, it's concerning, you know, when the defense was the strength of the team. And really, the defense is the reason they lost this game more so than anything. Because if the defense just, I don't know, gets like maybe not more, two or 3 stops, but makes a lot more tackles, they're probably in this game. But they definitely missed a lot of tackles. I will say that one of the things that I saw as the game was going on, like into like the third, maybe the fourth quarter, they showed a stat of like 3rd down conversions. Like I think Kentucky was like only had 4 3rd downs like at that point and something. And I was like, they have moved the ball that well on running plays on 1st and 2nd down that they didn't even need to get to 3rd down. That's how much they were kicking Florida's at some points. And I was like, God, I did it again. I need to stop cussing. I'm gonna have to go back again. Oh well. But no, so just a, I don't know. This was a butt whooping in a huge regard. And I don't know. Do you have anything else before we move on?
The only other thing I'll mention basically on offense is what I was worried about. When you stop the run of this offense, you pretty much stop the offense in general. Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne, as good as they are, if you contain him, because this offense isn't made to be big game passing, win it through the air. It's just not built like that right now. So that was the only other thing, and that's exactly how Kentucky played it. And I'll give credit to Kentucky. They were clearly the better team, and they proved it.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Let's do USC first before USF. USC.
God, that defense.
Yeah, the defense. But you know what? I will say Colorado's offense is not terrible. And, you know, last week, Oregon held them to only 7 points. This week, Colorado scores 41. But, you know, USC was up by so much at that point. I mean, I think they were up by like 28 at like near the end after they got up 48-20. And
they
so
were up like 34-7 and like 41-14.
Yeah, I mean, like,
point.
you know, they like the defense probably should have been more aggressive and they probably would have stopped them, but it was like they were up by so much that it didn't really matter. You know, like it was going to be in like, you know, and they even scored that last touchdown late. So it wasn't like they scored that last touchdown with like, you know, like 5-10 minutes left in the game. They scored it with like a minute or whatever. And they did an onside kick, but like onside kicks are rarely ever recovered. So it didn't even really matter. They had the game in control. Caleb Williams looks great again. 6 touchdowns. I mean, at this point, he's so firmly entrenched as the Heisman favorite. There would have to be, honestly, and I hope he stays healthy. It would really only be if he got injured or that's it. I don't think there's any other way at this point. If he continues this pace, he's gonna like not break, but like destroy what he did last year and put him onto maybe Joe Burrow-esque numbers of 2019. And so we'll see. Do you have anything from this before we move on?
Yeah, the only thing, like I said, that defense, USC clearly took the foot off the gas pedal in the second half.
Yeah.
But that's still like, to me, that's on coaching. Like, you've got to tell them, like, hey, look at that scoreboard. But when Colorado was coming, like, I get it. It was like 48 to like 21 or something at one point. And I get it. You're going into the third, but you still have to keep them in the mindset of, hey, you play the whole 60 minutes, especially with a team that scored as quick as Colorado.
Yeah.
You had to tell them to, keep your head in the game. And clearly that message was not, conveyed. The only other thing I'll add is that technically Colorado scored 21 unanswered points to end the game. You thank God they had Caleb Williams in that first half, because if that happens anywhere else, you probably aren't going to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, I know, and I get it. I mean, I just really think that the way it happened was, I think they took their foot off on the gas on defense, and they should have been more aggressive, because obviously they played well enough in that first half to, really, stop them. But then it was like, it seemed like they were playing prevent defense for the most part. And because they were up so much, it was like, as long as they didn't get big plays, Colorado, and like get a quick score, it was going to be a numbers game the whole time, where it's like, we keep them on the field as long as we do, it's better for them, like at that point, it's just a running clock. So if they're keep getting first downs, it doesn't matter. It's like, oh, you're wasting clock. That's more important. It's almost like in baseball, where it's like, you'll take a run for an out, where it's like, if someone's on third, you just need to get the outs. You're going to take the run, especially if you're up, whatever, it's similar. And so it again wasn't pretty, and it doesn't look good for them the last 2 weeks that they struggled on defense so much. But I think with that first half, they did have some success. It's tough because they have such a good offense. They're going to score quick. So it actually lengthens the game because they score so quick. And so it really puts the defense in a bad position most games, because then the defense is going to have to actually delay the game and, make them. And I'm not trying to defend it, because obviously it looked bad, especially the numbers if you look at it. But they did enough to win, and they're moving forward. Especially this game had so much hype in it. Now it's like Colorado, 2 losses the last couple of weeks, and you won't hear anything probably the rest of the year about them, because they're not going to beat Oregon and they're not going to beat Washington. And I think they play UCLA as well, so they're not going to beat them. So that's at least 5 losses. I mean, they'll be lucky to get a bowl game at this point with the rest of their schedule as hard as it is. Okay, moving on to USF Navy. I am really starting to enjoy this offense. It's making USF football fun again. It's, I have been waiting for, it's not just, the offense doing well, but it's also the team looking well in its entirety, and doing enough on defense to win games. They were up, most of the second half, and then they get that fumble return for a touchdown to really ice it. And, it's just, Byron Brown is really damn good. I'm real excited for his future, because he's got at least another year, probably 2 years. And so to see him grow as a quarterback has been amazing. And I'm excited for his future. The receiving core is great. Adkins, Simmons, Brown, all 3 of those guys are amazing. The running backs are studs. Naquan Wright and Dukes, just it is a real joy to watch. I'm, really proud of this team. I'm really proud of where they're going. Can't wait to see what they do. The rest of their schedule, man, is so easy. There are so many teams, especially in the next 4 weeks. Like UConn's bad. There's a bunch of other teams that are just not good that they're playing coming up, that they can really start running off a bunch of wins. And, I'm not counting my chickens before they hatch, but I'm just looking at the schedule where there's a lot of losses on the teams they're playing coming up. And that bodes well for them because they're already number one in the conference. So it's like if they can get a huge lead in the conference when they do play those tougher games, that they'll have such a lead that, won't be that big a deal if they lose a game or two. But either way, I'm excited. It's, Alex Golish has done a phenomenal job of turning around this team and putting them in a place to finally win games. And it's like, Ian, I know you're on campus. Yeah. I actually am excited for you to get there tomorrow because I bet it's going to be like probably the most hype you've ever seen because you've only seen bad years since you've been there. Like I know people are going to be wearing their gear. Like you'll see a lot of people wearing their shirts. I remember it because I was there during, when I was there, we had really good years before they got into the Big East. What it was like, I think the first year I was there was the first year we were in Division I, and then we, moved up to the Big East and
they were in Conference USA, then they went to Big
USA, East, and then the Big East, and it was like, dude, it was so exciting. I honestly was there for like the majority of the good times of USF, and it was such a great run to be around, and I'm glad for you that you are still there, that you get to see this because,
been a long time coming, I can tell you that.
No, I know, dude. It's frustrating. It's frustrating as me as just being an alumni that is not on campus because it's depressing after those games. After you lose bad, it's like, I don't even want to be here, man. It's like, it's just you like no one wears their gear. No one's happy to be, in spirit. And then it's like when you start winning, oh man, it's like you were wearing your gear all over town, talking to people about it. And that's what gets the area hyped about it, and the Tampa Bay area hasn't had them challenging for viewership in a long time, but now it's like it seems to be turning the corner, like Smoking Rice beating Navy, confident there was almost like as much as Navy went up 14-0 in this game, USF stayed on page, stayed with the system, just let's do this. Let's be our offensive. Yeah, but go ahead.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It was the same thing about the Rice game is that any other, in the years past, that team would have quit before. And when they went down, against Rice, they went down a few scores and then they get down 14-0, have an awful start, which I'll talk about in a second about their starts. But that's the one thing that they've shown is that they clearly have a script, a schedule that they go by, and they are confident that they can come back and win this. We mentioned earlier, they're forming into a second half team, which is really what the hurry up offense is meant to do. You're supposed to wear out the defense as much as possible, so then you get those big plays in the second half. Happened at Rice, happened this game, happened. You want to count Florida A&M? It happened against Florida A&M. Where they don't have these solid starts, but once you get into that second half, once you call that hurry up and they're tired and you're playing a whole game, that's where they really strike. The defense as well. I will say at the beginning I was a bit disappointed how the defense started. I was actually pretty concerned because I knew Navy was going to try to play keep away. That's the whole kind of nucleus of their offense. So it was important to get off the field, and they didn't do a good job in the first half. But once the second half came around, same thing. They kept the ball and gave enough time for USF to rest. And once the offense came on the field, it just started, humming. When South Florida started really clicking was when it was late into the third quarter. And especially with that fumble recovery, that was the biggest thing too, was they are very opportunistic. Once they get a turnover, they usually capitalize. And that's something they need with these games where it might not go their way, but they'll, be able to get the bounces for them to score. All in all, it was very good win, especially with how they started and coming back. They scored 21 unanswered after giving up the first 14, and just sticking with the script, keeping the momentum. And again, that offense is dynamite once it's into the second half.
Yeah, I mean, I love this offense. It is, you know, I don't know if it's as good as USC's offense because Caleb Williams is obviously the number 1 overall pick next year. But I mean, Byron Brown, he had just turned 19 on Friday, and like I don't know, man. I don't know what to like. I can't even project his future because like now at this point, like he's doing so well now. His like literally, he hasn't even played more than I think this is like his 7th game, like officially, like as a starter, and like he's already like well advanced more than than probably any quarterback USF has ever had. Like, and I love Quentin Flowers and I love Matt Grothy, but like, I mean, he's more talented than both of those guys. Like, really, like I honestly feel right now, if he keeps going the trajectory he's on, I can see him being drafted in the NFL. Like maybe not high, but maybe around like a 5th or 6th round pick. And who knows what happens next year and the year after. But I mean, honestly, he's killing it. And if he just keeps doing what he's doing, he's going to get a lot of attention because he's doing a lot of the like, I don't know. He's just dude, it's a joy to watch. I'm excited for the future of this team. And like I said, the sky is the limit at this point. I just hope that they can keep Alex Golish because people are going to want to go after him. And I think with the potential of what USF can become with getting the new stadium, bless you, getting
thank you,
getting you know, all those facilities and everything, I think he realizes where this team is setting itself up to where it could be. And like he could be, I don't know. And like the Tampa Bay area is a great place to live. I don't know why you would leave, you know. And so who knows? It's a very interesting story to see what's going to happen with all this, but I'm excited. So let's move on. Okay. So talking about these other games, we had the Utah Oregon State game on Friday. Oregon State wins 21-7. I mean, Utah scored that late touchdown, but they were never really in this game. Their offense is so bad without Cam Rising, and it's a shame because the defense is amazing. It just there was like, I don't know, there was nothing they could do in this game. They weren't going to be able to stop them completely. Oregon State is a really good team, and you know, the defense, Utah's defense did keep them in this game, but I'm just curious going forward, what is going to happen with Cam Rising? Are we going to see him at all? I know that they have a bunch of big games coming up, and so it's like, are they just waiting? And obviously they can take one loss in Pac-12 play, but if they take 2 losses,
that's a death sentence.
Yeah, so it's like they really can only take this one loss. Maybe this is just what he was doing. He's like, wait, play this as long as we can until we get one loss, and then it's like now we play him. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what they were just waiting. They're just seeing as long as they could get away with this until they're forced to play him. And because he was cleared to like full practice back in September 3rd. So that's been almost a month. I would think he's ready to go. But what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, for this one, it shows that Cam Rising really is the engine to this offense.
Yeah.
They couldn't really get anything on the ground, and especially passing, there wasn't anything there. I think they got held under 200 yards total, I believe. And with Oregon State, who doesn't have an elite, shall we say, offense, but when it's these kind of games, Utah's been stuck in these situations, and you know we kind of talked about it last week. They have shown to be very, unimpressive on offense. Yeah, they beat UCLA the week before, but that was only 14-7. They barely beat Baylor. And they put 31 on Weber State. They beat Florida 24-11. But the offense hasn't really been impressive, and unfortunately, when you don't have an offense to score, I mean, what's the point of the defense? I mean, the defense can only hold so much. That's why I said, if you're going to put the blame on anybody for Utah in this loss, it's got to be the offense.
Oh yeah, dude, 100%. This defense is definitely one of the best in the country. I would say definitely top 10. And if they had an offense, they'd probably hold teams to like 7 points. But because the offense is not doing anything, they basically have to play perfect for them to win games, which, I mean, it's tough. Like, they're going to make mistakes at some point, and they got bit in this game. I mean, Johnson is just not a good quarterback. And it sucks because, like, if they had decent quarterback play, they would have won this game. But like I said, if Cam Rising comes back next week, because they got Cal next week, so they should easily win that game without Rising. It's just the following week where it gets interesting when they have USC in LA, and then they have Oregon at home. So those 2 games are huge. Those 2 games will decide who wins the Pac-12. I'm almost guaranteeing it right now. So let's move on to Georgia Auburn. Man, dude, this is why I'm saying I'm not a believer in Georgia this year. And they're still obviously highly ranked because they won the championship last 2 years, but they survived this game. They barely beat Auburn. Auburn, honestly, man, when I was watching the replay, because I didn't watch all of it at live, when I watched like the highlight package, the like 10, 12-minute highlight package, clearly Auburn was the better team for like, I'd say 70% of this game, and was dominating in the rushing attack. I mean, dude, Brian Battie, obviously we know who he is because he was at USF last couple of years. Battie is a stud, and I hope he gets more play with them because I want to see him get drafted in the NFL. But it was so close. Again, the one thing that I'm amazed with, and they did have someone cover Brock Bowers pretty tight on most of those plays, but it seemed like there was some where he was just like wide open, and I'm just like, man, like this is their best player.
I know, you can't leave him that open. You need to double cover him at all times.
Yeah, have a safety over top. Like literally everyone else, I'm not afraid of anyone on Georgia. Not even their quarterback. He's not a speedster. Like he's probably more immobile than Stetson Bennett, and like he's got a better arm than Bennett, but he's not as mobile. But then, like, if that's really your only threat is Bowers, just double team him and then make the rest of them try to beat you, which I don't think they can. Like, you take Bowers for the equation, this team is like a average SEC team, not even a really good one. The defense is still solid, but they gave up a lot of yards on the ground. And, like I said, Auburn was definitely the better team most of this game. And Georgia lucks out here. And I'm telling you, they will not luck out against Tennessee, and they will not luck out against Ole Miss. So, and Georgia Tech does not look terrible this year. So there are 3 games that they have coming up, and maybe even a potential SEC championship game, which they could lose. And if they lose 2 games, they're not going to the playoff. I mean, this year there might be a lot of one-loss teams not making the playoff. So Georgia better tighten up, or they're gonna eliminate themselves sooner than later. But what are your thoughts before we move on?
No, I agree. I think we'll talk about it at the end of it, but I don't think Georgia's the best number 1 in the nation anymore. And I've been, as much as I hate them as a Gator fan, I've been saying for a while that Georgia has been the best team in the country. But this game, yes, they're undefeated. Yes, they won, but it's not impressive. I mean, you beat South Carolina by 10. Yeah. Then you really win by the skin of your teeth against Auburn. I agree. Auburn was the better team in this one. Or at least they played better. That would be the better way to put it. I
Yeah.
do think
Yeah,
talent per talent, I think that's what it came down to, was that Georgia had Brock Bowers and the better athletes, and Auburn just doesn't have that right now, especially
yeah.
through the passing game. I mean,
Yeah.
Carson Beck did throw over 300 yards, and I think Peyton Thorne, he didn't even get like 100 yards. I think they didn't really rely on him.
He had
But
he had 82.
yeah,
So
there was nothing. There was no counteract. There was no balance there.
yeah.
But I kind of felt that going in. I was like, Auburn's up like 17-10, or they were up 10-0 in the beginning. But
Yeah.
I'm like, they can't consistently score, so that's the problem. If they were like up by that much and still having the third to score, they would have had a shot. But again, Georgia, just based on sheer out athleting, wins this game, and they are gonna I guarantee you every Bulldog fan or anybody within the state of Georgia went to church today and said, "Thank you, Lord, for Brock Bowers."
There was only 4 penalties in this game. I find that hard to believe. Okay, moving on. Next game we had was the Baylor Kansas Texas game. Texas wins this pretty handedly. Texas wins 40-14. Jalen Daniels was not even in the game. He hurt his back, and I didn't even know that when we did the preview show. So I'm kind of miffed that was the case. But you know what? Kansas was playing them tough in the first half, but then just Texas ran out. And honestly, man, the more and more, the deeper we're getting into this year, Caleb Williams is setting himself aside as the number 1 for Heisman, but Quinn Ewers is jumping up in those rankings, man. He's starting to really set himself apart from the rest of the other people besides Michael Penix Jr. So it's it's really 3 guys that and Bo Nix too, but it's those 4 guys that I'm really man. But you know who actually, and as a side from this specific game, but Dylan Gabriel is putting up huge numbers. And I think just because they haven't played anyone yet, they haven't played a ranked team. That's what I think a lot of people are not giving them as much love. I think they have some games coming up next week, obviously against Texas, but no, this Texas team looks good. Freaking what's his face? Brooks, the running back, just destroyed Kansas all day. He had 217 on the ground, 2 TDs. This team is really good. If you are not aware of how good Texas is this year, I think we can finally say, I know we've joked for many years. I've used the Sam Ellinger, the little video.
Yeah, we're back.
That they're officially back. I can say it, and I'm not going to eat crow about it, because I have no doubt in my mind they're probably going to beat Oklahoma this week, and they're going to continue to roll in the Big 12. And they're definitely a potential playoff team right now, and I think they're solidly entrenched in that spot. So what's your thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, I'll make it brief, because Texas, as much as we like Kansas, and Kansas being, actually good, Texas was clearly the better team, and they clearly showed it. I mean, they had, I think it was over 400 more yards than Kansas had. The better team won, and they really showed why they were the better team.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Baylor UCF, just an improbable win. Improbable. When I saw the score in the first half, I was like, oh, I'm not even going to watch this game. And then for some reason, because I don't think I even saw the score anywhere else on whatever games I was watching, and I was like, you know what, let me put it on, see what the score is. And they were close and close, and they finally took the lead. And I was just like, what is going on here? And oh man, just craziness. It couldn't happen to a more terrible fan base. So, you know what, UCF, you deserve it. You are insufferable. No one likes you. And this is what you get for being such jerks on Twitter all the time. So, eat it. That's all I got to say. What do you got, Ian?
it's one thing because everybody's like, it is the largest comeback by Baylor in their program history, da da da. I don't understand how going into the fourth quarter, you were up 35-10 and you still lose the game. I don't know how that happens. Because even then, like, okay, UCF just, I don't know what happened on offense. They just couldn't get a sustained drive like they did in the beginning of the game. The Russian attack, it was either Tommy McClain or Richardson get yards. Stop going through the big play. Just we need first downs. Kill that clock. We kick a field goal. That really makes it even harder because at that point, I mean, amazingly, that goes from a 4-possession game to a 5-possession game. Can't believe you had to talk about that.
Yeah.
But they kick. If UCF just needs to kick one field goal in the second half, and that's it. They would have won the game. But somehow, some way, some poor fashion, they just fell apart spectacularly in that fourth quarter. And it's one thing if it happened like they were playing Oklahoma or Texas or one of even like TCU or K-State, one of these good Pac-12 teams. Baylor has shown they are not elite this year.
They were 1-3 at that point. They lost to Texas State. Like they were not. They shouldn't have won this game. They clearly shouldn't have won this game. And now the funny thing is UCF is 2 games into the Big 12 and they're 0-2.
Oh, they still haven't won one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm loving it. But let's move on. LSU Ole Miss. This was by far the most fun game of the day. Back and forth the entire time. It was 31-28 at halftime. The final score was 55-49. It was like over 1,300 yards of offense between the two teams. Just like they both almost threw for over 400 yards. Both had 4 TDs. Quinshon Judkins at 177 yards on the ground. Ridiculous. It was such a crazy game, and you knew it was going to be whoever had the ball last was going to win. And I would have thought that LSU was going to finish that drive, but just barely. I don't know if you saw the highlight. It goes off that guy's hands. Like it bounced off his hands. He could have caught that at the end to win, and they just barely lose. What a crazy game. Just a great game.
Yeah, and at least my take from it was this, we were talking like LSU, they usually have these hot starts and then they peter out.
Yeah.
This was the opposite. They did not have a good start to the game. I know they went down like 21-7 in the beginning, and then you're working uphill the whole game.
Yeah, because they were down 28-14 at one point, and I thought Ole Miss was going to blow them out. And then LSU started coming back, and LSU went up like 9 points at one point, and just Ole Miss had to come back. So it was such a back and forth game, but such a great game. But go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, it just, my point to that was it is just a world of different when you have had to come back from multiple possessions to tie the game or take the lead from the game.
Yeah.
Than it is for the other team to be like, okay, we're down, but we can easily just score once, instead of the other side where it's like, oh, we had to score 3 times and now we got to do it again. It's exhausting. And that's really what it was. Like towards the end, there was only so much LSU could have done, but you could tell they were just exhausted. They had tried everything, but Ole Miss just had the upper hand. The only other thing I'll add too is that as good and exciting this game was, my God, they need to take a long look in the mirror on their defense.
Yeah. 100%. Okay, moving on. Iowa State, Oklahoma. Oklahoma wins 50-20. And this game was closer in the first half, but then Oklahoma just really started to take it to them once it was like a 21-20 game. And then, Iowa State didn't score a single point after that. But like I said, Dylan Gabriel is quietly becoming someone to talk about because he had 366 yards and 3 TDs. So, this team has not played anyone, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. Will they start making noise? Obviously, next week is a prove-it game for both Oklahoma and Texas, even though Texas already has a solid win against Kansas and Alabama, especially Alabama, considering how strong Alabama's looked the last 2 weeks. But interesting game coming up, Texas, Oklahoma. But anything from this you want to talk about?
I mean, I would say that second quarter was the turning point, especially that safety. Once Oklahoma got that safety, they scored the field goal in the possession, stop Iowa State, and then they, score again. That's at least like a 10-point swing right there. And then, they were off to the race at that point.
Okay. Probably the game of the day, Notre Dame, Duke, it was a low scoring game and there was a ton of missed field goals in it. But I will say Sam Hartman just did what he needed to do on that fourth down, and there's nobody open, and he's just like faking.
And there's nobody covering Hartman.
Yeah, and he just takes off, and boom, man. He honestly, that was such a huge play because if he doesn't make it, the game's over.
Game.
But he, got it, and and then Estime, does his thing and puts it in. It's funny, if he goes down before he scores that touchdown, they can probably bleed out the clock and then kick the field goal as time expires. So it is one of those things where it's like maybe you don't give him a chance. And it was a similar thing with the Ole Miss LSU game. It's like if you get to a situation where it's like you can score, you should probably go down so that you can run out the clock. Because I would rather – I know you don't want to trust college kickers because they're very inconsistent, but I don't know. Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly. It's a tough decision. But Notre Dame gets the win. They continue on. They have a chance at the playoff. They play Clemson coming up very soon. And they also play USC as well in, 2 weeks. But they have Louisville next week. So a lot of tough games for them in the next month and a half. A lot to play for, Notre Dame. I'm telling you, man, this is a very good team. I don't ever blow smoke up Notre Dame's ass because I'm usually the first one to say I'm not impressed. This is completely counterintuitive to who I have been as a, college football fan, college football, in the media as what we do. And so this team is much better than the teams in the years past. And with Sam Hartman, he's a legitimate quarterback. He can make the throws. He is definitely going to play on Sundays, and he gives them a fighting chance every week. This game was very close. Duke took the lead late, and he came back and put them on top, and they won. But what do you got, Ian, before we move on?
Yeah, it was – well, first of all, I'm going to get really upset with Duke's defense. It's 4th and 18 or however it was. Yeah. I don't care if you're playing prevent. You have to have coverage on all parts of the field. And clearly they just followed the receivers and they didn't look at Hartman's eyes.
Right.
And that ended up biting them in the ass. Then, Estime obviously scores a touchdown after. But Notre Dame found a way to win. I mean, really, I was kind of the opposite opinion. I was like, I don't know if any of these teams deserve the win because they did not play good at all.
Yeah.
But Notre Dame, I would say, yeah, they were the better team and they made the most of what was given to them. That fourth down, I was like, how do you let that happen? So that was the thing I would say. Duke deserved to lose after that.
Yeah. Okay. Next game was the Alabama Mississippi State game. Alabama wins. I'm trying to pull up the score here. Un segundo. Alabama wins. I just had it. Where'd it go? 40-17. I mean, it was back and forth for a little bit in this game, but Alabama just imposed their will, and their defense looks really good. Like, as much as the offense may not look as lethal as it has been in years past with, Bryce Young or Jalen Hurts or Tua or Mac Jones, the defense definitely is kind of correcting course from the last couple of years because LSU allowed Ole Miss to score 55 the week before. Alabama kept them to 10 points. So definitely this defense is something to be, all right, this might be one of those years where it's like Alabama only really needs to just hold teams to like 17 points and they can start winning these games. So as much as they lost to Texas, they have not lost an SEC game, and they definitely stand head and shoulders above the rest of the West right now. They have some big games coming up with they've got Texas A&M next week, and we'll talk about that. But they also have Tennessee, LSU, and Kentucky in consecutive weeks, and Auburn to finish it off. But this Alabama team is good. Do not think that this team is not worthy of praise because this team is definitely worthy. But what do you got, Ian?
Yeah, again, just the better team winning, especially the better defense winning. Forcing the 3 turnovers and making Will Rogers' life a living hell. That was really the difference. Offensively, nothing spectacular, but it didn't have to be. You hit the nail right on the head. As long as the defense can just hold these teams to less than 20 points, I have faith that Bama's offense should get 20 points more often than not.
Oh yeah, 100%. And not only that, like defensive scores too, which they've always done that consistently, either getting defensive scores or special team scores. So that right there, it will be the difference in a lot of their games going forward. Okay, let's move on to South Carolina, Tennessee. This game was a lot closer at some points, but then Tennessee really started to outpace them. And, because Milton had 2 interceptions, but it was like in the run game, South Carolina just could not stop their running backs. Jalen Wright had over 100 yards. And I don't know. This South Carolina defense is very suspect, and I'm not a really big fan of. And, and like I said, with Florida, it's like, we've talked about it. These other teams are not very good. Like, yes, Kentucky, they're whipped their butts. But, besides that, they don't have to they don't have to play Kentucky again. They have to play these other teams that don't look that good, which I think they've got a chance. But back to South Carolina, Tennessee, Tennessee, gets off that loss to Florida, and now they've scored 40 points in 2 straight games. So maybe they've got things corrected, and they still have a lot to play for because they only have 1 loss. And as of right now, their schedule looks like they've got Alabama and A&M in a row, and Kentucky. So they have a 3-game stretch that's really tough. I don't know. We'll see what happens with Tennessee. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah, it was. You could tell they were kind of. Tennessee hasn't done the best job of starting games, and that proved opponent here. And that they've really got to correct that. They didn't start well against Virginia. They definitely didn't start well against Florida, and they didn't have the best start against South Carolina. Those first quarters and early second quarters, they have really struggled, and they need to fix that quick to win more of these games. But overall, this says more about just again, Tennessee was just flat out the better team. They had the better stops. South Carolina's defense, they preyed on the weakness of the rushing defense and attacked on it. They knew Milton probably wasn't having his best game, so they either used his legs or used the legs of the running backs to, get down the field and just make the, easy conversions and put in those high percentage 3rd down plays.
Okay, last game before we're done. Washington, Arizona. Michael Penix Jr. does not have a touchdown in this game, but he threw for 363, which is really good anyways. And he was 30 of 40, which is 75%. So he's continuing to dominate teams. It was a 2-score game into the 4th, and then Arizona scores late. So it looked closer than it actually was. Again, very similar to the USC Colorado game. But, Washington was in control of this game throughout. They had a good running attack on the ground to be able to get a lot of those touchdowns, and played well enough defensively to win this game. And they win and they move on. That's all that really matters. Moving on to these bigger games coming up for them, which they're coming up. Next week 2 weeks for them is Oregon, and then in November they have a murderer's row. Listen to their November real quick. They have USC on the road, then at home against Utah, then on the road at Oregon State in Corvallis, then at home against Washington State. I mean, you're talking about like they literally I think they're the only team out of the good Pac-12 teams that has to play everyone. Like they have to play Oregon, USC, Utah, Oregon State, and Washington State. Like they got shafted out of their schedule makers. But we'll see. I mean, they're going to be tested, and I'm excited to see because Michael Penix Jr. is a fully capable quarterback. And like I said, Caleb is definitely 1A right now, but Michael Penix Jr. is not far from being 1B. So going forward, Heisman-wise, Michael Penix is right there with another huge game. Just didn't have any touchdowns, which kind of hurts. But what do you got before we go, Ian?
Yeah, it was Washington found a way to win this game. The passing game was more efficient than the run game. That's usually why I think the score was a bit closer. It got a bit daunting at times, is that there wasn't a rushing complement to help Penix kind of get more freedom airing it out. But I still think, Washington played a good game. Clearly we're the better team and proved it. Now they got to get ready for a huge game against rival Oregon next week.
Yeah, I'm so excited for that game. Like, well, it's not next week, it's 2 weeks.
Oh, 2 weeks. Sorry.
Yeah, but still
their next game, I meant.
Yeah, their next game. But dude, Oregon, Washington, that may be the best game of the year. Like it might be like 50 to 50, like 55 to 50 or something like that. But yeah, exciting. Do you want to do Heisman's now real quick before we go and playoff too?
I mean, I've got my three.
Who do you got?
Michael Penix Jr., Caleb Williams, and after this last week, Brock Bowers.
You keep putting that up there.
I know. He's the best non-skill. I shouldn't say non-skill, but like he's not a wide receiver. He's the best tight end in the country.
Yeah,
I like tight ends.
Yeah, Michael Penix and Caleb. There's really no two better, and I'm really starting to put Quinn up there because Quinn Ewers has definitely been playing against good opponents. So, and he's been performing in those games. So all three of those guys are studs. And Bo Nix, we'll see in the next couple of weeks because they didn't play this week. But, Bo Nix is up there. He's putting up huge numbers. Okay, playoff teams real quick before we go. Last thing.
Yeah, so my playoff teams, and I did make a change after this week. So
yeah,
number 1, Texas.
Nice.
Number 2, Ohio State.
Yeah.
Number 3, Georgia. Yeah. Number 4, Michigan. And my first 2 out, USC and Florida State.
See, as of right now, I have USC. I think I have USC probably 3. I have Texas 1, and I probably have Washington 4, and then I'll probably have Oregon at 5, FSU probably at 6, and then probably Georgia at 2. I don't know where I put Ohio State right now. I think I'm going to need to see more from them. Their schedule will get more dicier when they have to play Penn State, and I guess that's really it, Penn State and Michigan. But I need to see more from Ohio State before I decide that they are a playoff team. But that is the show, everybody. Reach us again at haterradio.com. All the socials, like I said, at hater_radio or at Hater Radio for YouTube and Hater Radio CFB for Facebook. But for Ian, for myself, take care, everyone. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you Wednesday.